Hello and welcome to the DrivingMaul show. And yes, for the first time in a long time, the Gallagher Shield is heading to South Auckland, and so we'll be talking about that on the show. Club Rugby there for you folks. There's also Farah Palmer Cup action and NPC action from the weekend to talk about, as well as a couple of international games. We will cover all of that here on the DrivingMaul show. Hi, I'm Paul. I'm your host this evening, as I am every evening at 8 p.m. on Monday evenings, live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Also, you can catch our show as a podcast as well. Just search New Zealand Sport Radio. And joining me is this evening is the director of rugby from Manukau Rovers. It's Bella. How are you doing, sir?
Kia ora, talafalava, kia orana, malo lele. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Paul. It's lovely to be on the show after a long time. The reason is the club Premier Grade season is now over, and I've actually got the week off before I have to head back doing some other coaching courses. Amazing weekend, and it's really cool when a plan which we hatched probably 11 months ago came together, and it took till the very last second of all the rugby we had to play to actually win the Gallagher Shield, and it's a surreal feeling, Paul. It's an incredible feeling, real honor and privilege, and I'm just so humbled. And it's been a real buzzy weekend.
Well, yes, I think it sounded like you were the responsible member who stayed a little bit less buzzy than some others, looking after the boys as they rightly celebrated what was a very big achievement.
Always the case, man. I have to make sure that everyone, and we do, we're very responsible, community-based, family-based club, so everyone's having a good time, but it was safe, and everyone enjoyed it.
So just to give everyone who doesn't know, the Gallagher Shield is the trophy for the men's Premier competition, club competition in Auckland, and Manukau Rovers reached the final for the first time in quite a lot of years.
49 years. It's been a long time since drinks.
To actually reach the final and up against Ponsonby, who are one of the more storied clubs in Auckland. Brian Williams was there for who's an ex-player, but a place where your players like the club for like Kiriwani, Rico Iwani, those sort of players have Ponsonby as their club and have occasionally turned out for that club. And yes, they went in as favourites, let's be honest, whereas Manukau Rovers, as you say, the first time in 49 years, how would the players react to playing on Eden Park after the Farah Palmer Cup game had there, and then was followed up by the NPC game. So you had a big crowd in the biggest stadium in the country. Most of these players will not have played on that grass before, I assume. So yeah, a very big occasion for them as well. And did the nerves play a bit into it? Do you think?
No, not at all. In fact, it was something we spoke about early in the week, where we didn't really want to be starstruck and let the nerves get to us. And we were very comfortable. It's something we handled very well, because one thing I have to say is the last 3 weeks on the trot, we've won it basically on the last hooter, and this final was no different. And I thought everyone kind of handled it really, really well. They didn't let the occasion get to them. But I think it was, we did a lot of mental preparation around this, particularly when we made it to the semi-finals. We had to play varsity away to qualify for the semi-finals. So I think we handled it really well, and obviously we got the right result as well. So yeah, full marks to the boys.
Fantastic news, and as you say, these things don't happen by chance. There's a lot of work goes on behind the scenes. I've just run it back from the Waihi Rugby committee meeting, we've been discussing the head coach for next season. Then the season's kick off to like February, March. and putting things in place already. So these things do take a lot of planning, a lot of work by a lot of people behind the scenes. For the players, they just have to turn up in pre-season and play a little bit, whereas the administrators and the club chairmen, etc., are at this for the full 12 months of the year. So fantastic result from what is, as you say, a lot of hard work has got into doing it, and congratulations in doing that. This is my first time getting involved. I'm not actually a member of the committee. I go along for other reasons, but it is interesting. It's interesting to see behind the scenes on these sort of things. That was
and Paul, just to give you an indication of how dominant Ponsonby have been, they've actually won 35 of the 99 Gallagher Shields which have been played. So that means almost 36.3% of the time the Gallagher Shield has been on offer. They seem to have won. So this is our third title. So clearly we've got a bit of catching up to do to Ponsonby. Hopefully over the next 200 or so years we will get there, but I'm sure Ponsonby will be winning a few of those as well. So that's how remarkable Ponsonby's record is, and to beat a team like that, not once but twice, because keep in mind we beat them in the first round, in the round robin. We gave them a bit of a touch up, and to do that again in a final last moment, it's quite surreal, Paul.
Yep, no, absolutely. And last year, Eden won it for the first time ever in their history. But then 2020 was obviously cancelled. But Ponsonby, yes, were 2019, 2018 there. But yeah, to have two of the not so sort of storied clubs pick up, or not so sort of big clubs in recent times pick up the trophy in the last 2 years is very good for club rugby in Auckland. It shows the strength isn't just amongst the 2 or 3 teams. And it's spreading around a bit more, which is great to see. So well done to Manukau Rovers, and I think that'll also give belief to a number of the other South Auckland clubs as well. We'll think, hang on, if they've done it, why can't we? And so I expect some of those Papitotois and your Pakarangas to be up in their game over the next couple of seasons, and I'm sure it's going to be it'll be difficult to do it again. But as Brian, we said in your change rooms afterwards, it's all about keeping this group together. Let's hope the club can go from strength to strength, and they enjoy playing with each other. You don't lose too many players to overseas or to professional clubs.
Absolutely. And look, one thing I have to say is, like, you got to plan. You know, we when I sat down with Doug Sanfus, my head coach for the Premiers, one of our key focuses was detail. Keep the details very simple, and we actually broke down pretty much every training session we were going to have. And we broke that down into simple detail, and we kept inspecting it, examining it, looking at what changes we need to do, looking at previous week games, just looking at what we need to do. And also we put a lot of focus on mental skills. It's an area which I directly oversee. So yeah, it was pretty awesome, and from a personal point of view, it was a great learning experience for me as well, particularly working with younger players coming into the system. And keep in mind, we had to literally build a team from scratch because we only had one player retained from last year. We lost a lot of players for varying reasons, going overseas, moving to other clubs. So it was a real challenge, and to be able to do this within a season, within a calendar year, with a completely different team is just testament to that rugby IQ which we put together, the planning, the preparation, and most importantly, executing on the day.
Sorry, I just muted my mic there. I opened up my can of beer.
It's quite all right. I do it all the time myself.
Yes, so there we go. So congratulations, Bella. Let's move on now to some of the other rugby that's been going on around the thing. We're going to first of all touch in on the Farah Palmer Cup, where counties pushed Canterbury close, losing that one out 31-36 there in the Premiership. Whereas Auckland Storm, just before your game, you were probably concentrating on your game more than this, but 32-5 against Manukau Cyclones, who are having a bit of a tough season now. It's 4 losses on the bounce for Manawatu. And then the game that I was at, Waikato beating Bay of Plenty 17 to 10. Did you catch? Did you manage to see any of that Auckland Storm game, or was that, or were you too busy?
I did catch most of the first half. Look, it was a bit of it was an end-to-end sort of game. There was a lot of loose footy, I thought. And one observation I had was, it would have been good to see, particularly at the highest level. When I mean highest level, first class level, in Farah Palmer Cup, would have loved to see a little more structured footy. It was just a bit disjointed and was all over the shop, probably because it's the first round. But Auckland were very dominant. When they exerted their physicality, Manawatu just couldn't keep pace with them, and the tries just kept coming. It was entertaining. It was a small but very vocal and at times rowdy crowd. So that the cheers and the cries and the howls at times reverberated in a somewhat empty stadium. So it kind of gave the whole affair a little bit of flavor, and it was entertaining at times. But all in all, Auckland just flexed when they wanted to, and they just blew Manawatu away. And I couldn't catch the second half because obviously we were in preparation mode. But now well done to Auckland, opening the campaign on a winning note.
And it looks like Auckland will be up there with the other. Now they've got 2 wins and 2 losses so far. Canterbury added their 3rd win, and then we had 2 teams that have been unbeaten with Waikato and Bay of Plenty. First off, I've got a couple of interviews here. First off, we'll hear from the losing captain, Luca Connor, from Bay of Plenty about the game and how things are going. After the Waikato versus Bay of Plenty in the Farah Palmer Cup with Luca Connor, the captain of Bay of Plenty. So girls start that game, really put Waikato under pressure, but just couldn't get the points on the board. I think that was probably one of your issues.
Yes, we had a great start to the game, so that was our plan, come out, really put them on the back foot, but we just couldn't execute and get the points, which was really disappointing.
Yeah, another low-scoring game, a bit like against Auckland, but you came out on top there. I mean, these games are really tight, aren't they, between the top teams in the Farah Palmer Cup? It's you've got, I think I've counted 4 Black Ferns in the current squad in your pack. I mean, you've got a really strong team there. So you must be looking forward, must be sort of hopeful for what you can achieve in this Farah Palmer Cup this year.
I think so. We've got a bunch of young girls and then experienced as well. And then heading into Black Ferns, like you say, we lose a couple girls, but I believe our pack that's there is definitely capable, back them 100% to go right to the end. Now, talking about Black Ferns, you've played some club rugby this year, you've played some Super Rugby Aupaki, some Black Ferns, now NPC. How are you finding it having 4 different coaches and jumping between different game styles? I really enjoyed Aupaki, so that was really fun. So it was actually the girls we played today, we never get to play together, it's always against each other. So to be able to play in the Chiefs together and then today go against each other, we have that really high competition against each other, and just the rugby's been awesome, but it's been full on, definitely. And I'm lucky enough that Crystal was the coach for Chiefs and then is now our Bay of Plenty coach, so it's quite easy to be under her. So you're not having brand new line-out calls every 2 weeks and having to remember all of that kind of stuff. Yes, definitely line-outs. There's a million different ones, but just got to do my homework, I guess. Now, when we last talked, it was your very first time captaining Bay of Plenty at the end of last season. How are you finding captaining? Are you enjoying being a captain and the responsibility that you get with that? I'm really enjoying it. The girls are awesome. We have a good bunch of young and old, good mix, and everyone just does their job, so it makes it easy. Great. Well, thank you so much for your time, and good luck for the rest of the season. Hopefully we get to chat again. Thank you so much. Cheers. So Luca, just for you don't know, is the scrum. Not scrum. The hooker for the team, and hence line-out calls, and having 4 different sets of line-out calls in the season is going to be interesting. When we talk about details, Boa, that's a lot of work to get through, isn't it?
It is, but that's how the professional level works. I mean, we have 5 test caps in our side. Unfortunately, we lost them all 5 weeks out from the playoffs. Most of them turned up Samoa and Tonga Pacific Nations Cup. So just when I have exit interviews with our players, just getting feedback, just getting a feel for what they do in a fully professional environment. This is what they have to do. They have their own notepads. They do a lot of studying, a lot of whiteboard sessions. Learning the line out codes, and whenever they come back into an environment, I try and get all our other non-professional players to be sponges, to absorb as much knowledge and get feedback from them so they can prepare themselves for what it's like at the next level. So it's just part and parcel of it. And I guess for these girls in the Farah Palmer Cup, it's a tremendous experience. And there was a really cool interview, very candid. And I think the more they experience this, the more they're getting used to it. And it's not easy, it's not easy playing rugby for a living. When you're doing it full time, it's a thinking man's and thinking woman's game. So I think that we got a really good, honest cross section of what's actually required, particularly around your line out calls, and when you're a hooker, because you're always throwing the ball into the lineup, and of course your strike moves. So it is challenging, but I'm sure these girls enjoy it, and hopefully they don't get too many mix-ups, and hopefully the opposition don't manage to steal some of those calls just like that, because chances are, having played together, it's very difficult to vary things too much because you don't want to over-engineer it. So that's definitely one of those challenges. So good on these girls, and I'm really happy for them because it looks like they're really enjoying their footy.
Yeah, we'll have a quick chat with I'll get the Rennie Holmes, the Waikato captain next. But in the men's game, normally you only have to deal with 2 teams a year, i.e. your Super Rugby and International and All Blacks, or Super Rugby and NPC, or Club and NPC. I say these girls this year, the way their season is, having to deal with 4 different teams is a lot. But anyway, let's hear from Rennie Holmes, the Waikato captain now. Here we are after the Farah Palmer Cup with when Waikato against Bear Plenty, with Rennie Holmes, the captain and try scorer for Waikato. You guys were put under a lot of pressure initially in that game and did well to hold out Bear Plenty over the first sort of 20 odd minutes.
Yeah, we always knew it was going to Bear Plenty were going to come out pretty hot. This is always the game that they always love to get up for. Chief Country Cup on the line. So we always knew that from the blocks there was going to be heaps of pressure. It was just about how do we absorb that, and then how do we try and get over that.
Yep, and then you're off, well, as Joel mentioned just before this, the forwards went to work and got a couple of tries after yours as
yes.
well, to make it 17-10. I mean, not a high-scoring game, but one that, a lot of work going in for those points. I've gone blank. I'm so sorry, folks.
You're fine.
There you go. And I mean, it's sort of frenemies kind of thing, because a lot of those players you've played with as part of the Chiefs and the Super Rugby Aupaki. So yeah, as you say, it's a big rivalry between the two of you.
Yeah, so obviously we do know players for players, and we obviously knew coming into this week where they were going to try and keep the ball, which was in their forwards. So we just knew our forwards had to show up today and muscle up with them. And that's what our forwards have been doing every week. Every team's been trying to target and keep it into the forwards, so we've just been having to lift our forwards up.
Now, it was, the forwards did a good job, but from the backs as well, considering you had 2 Black Ferns drop out late in the piece. How did you cope with that disruption in there? Did you find that was a problem?
Yeah, obviously it was a disruption, but we've got like a very big squad, and our girls that can just slot in there pretty easily, they do. And obviously losing that experience, it does mean a lot, but then it gave opportunities for girls to debut today, which was really exciting. And
also not only debuts, but you've got 35 cap and Blazers, so it's a good mixed experience and youth you've got there. From a personal point of view, how have you found jumping between Club Rugby, Black Ferns, Super Rugby, and also Farah Palmer Cup? So 4 different sets of coaches, 4 different game plans, and also jumping between them. So you did like Club, Super back to Club, Black Ferns back to Club.
Yeah, it definitely is a lot, and I think it's just really important for us to be able to take back knowledge that we do learn in the higher teams back into the environments that we're still building with. And so it is definitely a lot, having to learn 4 different game plans, 4 different moves, but at the end of the day, if you do your homework right and fully channel into what team you're in, then you can't go wrong.
Well, congratulations to the win, and good luck for the rest of the year, because as you say, there's still a lot of rugby to be played, and thank you so much for your time.
Awesome, thank you very much.
Oops, you got my blooper in there as well with that one, folks. But as you were saying there, but bring the experience back, get the club players with as up to speed from that as possible, and as you say, great to see them enjoying their rugby. There, I mean, you saw with Luca that disappointed to lose, but if you look at how someone like Sam Kane, how painful he looked in his post-match interviews, you can see these girls are actually enjoying the environment, and it's much easier to talk to them post-game than must be some of the men are. Put bluntly, in some of the post-match interviews I've had the joy of doing.
That's true, and if you look at both retrospectively, look at both interviews, both the girls were talking about homework. So there you go, kids. Make sure you go to school, do your homework, and you will be a successful rugby player. So it's no different to what you do in life. And yeah, you're right, Paul. I think with in the women's environment, the little bit of experience I've had involved in coach education around women in rugby, there is a lot of scientific evidence to back this as well, particularly in sport. They are a lot more receptive, and they're more sort of receptive in direct learning styles, whereas men tend to learn slightly different. It doesn't mean to say one is right or better over the other, but there's a sense of more acceptance. So it's actually a learning ability. So what I'm trying to say is, in case the result doesn't go your way, winning and losing is part of life. But so long as you learn from your failure and you're failing forwards, you land on your face, so you can put your hands down like doing a press up and get right back up, as opposed to if you fail backwards and you whack the back of your head, you might not be able to get up. So I think that analogy should give you a good insight into what's going on. And unfortunately, since you brought up Sam Kane, he's probably caught in the twilight zone, and that's where wider coaching skills need to come in, which is something we'll talk about later in the show.
Yeah, he's not the only one though. That was just one that people can relate to at the moment. I'll say I've plenty of opportunities where players have not wanted to talk after the games, but I don't have that problem there. Moving on then to the championship at the Farah Palmer Cup, Northland came up short against Hawke's Bay, 17-32, and then I think you can really see the sides that are going to do well and the sides that aren't. Taranaki lost to Otago 15-55, and then a big win for Tasman, 42-15 over North Harbour. Now Tasman are very young, generally a young setup there. They don't have a university, so lose a lot of their players down to particularly to Otago. Very, very good for them there in that one. Generally, Tasman know they're not. The women's side is not the same as the men's, in that they're aiming for the championship thing. It's more about developing the players, because they know they don't necessarily they're not necessarily able to hold them in what is an amateur team in Tasman. So very good result for them against North Harbour. Otago leading the way there in that championship with 3 wins from their 3 games, and then Hawke's Bay. I expect it between the two of them, to be honest with you, for that champion, for looking for promotion in that one. Heading on then to the MPC, and that kicked off this weekend. Now, I think they got the scheduling wrong, Boa, to be honest with you. To kick off the season with Manukau against Canterbury. Manukau, there's a new structure this year, folks, so there's no Premiership and Championship, it's just all one group. But Manukau historically have been a championship side, mid-table championship side. Canterbury have been a top of the Premiership championship side. Putting those two together, it was pretty clear what was going to happen, and it did. 15-62 on Friday night. Not the best game to kick off the competition with, Boa.
Oh, not at all. And it just does not, and it just doesn't do anyone any favors. I mean, I get that when you're swimming all in the same ocean. You can't be the goldfish in the pond. You got to swim with the sharks. I get all of that. But I think with the scheduling, they've got to look at some kind of handicapping system where, you've got to have some even matchups going in. And you got to give teams who are not as up to the mark. And clearly, in this instance, the Manawatu against Canterbury, it was just an absolute mismatch, and there was only ever going to be one result. And it's not good for rugby. So I think, people who schedule these games, they really need to have a hard look at it. What I would like to see is the top teams go straight into it. Now, I'll give you a really good example. The All Blacks, this season, we haven't had any easy punch bag games. So we're straight into an Irish tour who was probably in the peak of their form, and we got walloped. Straight after that, it was into the fire from the frying pan, which, we're experiencing now against the Springboks in South Africa. So, if you really want to develop the game, this is what we need to happen. We need teams of even keel going at each other, like mountain goats going for that big clash of horns. Getting easy beats and feeding lesser teams to the top teams does no one, and most importantly, the game any favors. And what it actually does is it turns people away from coming through those turnstiles. So that's sort of, to me, it's just disenfranchising what NPC stands for. But again, that's just my opinion. If it was up to me, I'd just click my fingers like that, and I'd have far more evenly matched games, particularly for the first 4 rounds, until teams get a bit of a form line going, and then let's look at matching them up.
Look,
but there's
every
probably
other game in this round was by 10 points or less, right? Every other game was close. This was the only one that was a blowout, and they make that the opening game on a Friday night. That, to me, is where I think they got the scheduling wrong. Is that they just chose the wrong team. And as Nocturnal Right says, Manawatu coaching staff seem to have low expectations. So did everybody watching it. Whack this as your middle game on Saturday, your middle game on Sunday, and people went where you're running games, sometimes you're running games 2 at the same time. That way, yes, you can choose a good a blowout if you want to watch it. If you're one of the fans of one of these two teams, you want to watch it, but you can also watch a good game if you want to on the other side. So, and I was lucky; I got to be at one of those, which was a draw after golden point, so extra time. So look, there were plenty of good games this weekend. They just scheduled the wrong one for Friday night. I've got to say, thank you so much, Rob Osborne, who has checked in. Thank you, sir, for your coverage and your write-ups of club rugby that we've had and that you put up on the site. It's been really appreciated how you've helped out Stephen Harris there with his club coverage. And thank you, Rob. And I know that Stephen has got some good ideas and plans for next year around the club coverage here on New Zealand Sport Radio. So, Rob, thank you. And I'm sure you'll be part of that with Stephen next year as well. As Rob says, the Battle of the Bridge should have been the curtain raiser for the Gallagher Shield final, not the other way around. I don't think you're the only one who thinks that. I think a lot of people would, matter of fact, I would have said probably 70 to 80% of the crowd would have been happy with that situation, to be honest with you. There.
No question. Look, thank you, Rob, for everything you've done, and thank you for saying this aloud. Because if I said it, I'd probably get ostracized by the union. All I know, I already.
You're doing a good enough job getting to ostracize yourself by the union. You don't need any help.
Yeah, look, we had 12 busloads leave Mangere for Eden Park. My memory of that final was, and it's been reverberating in my head, was that chant, "Let's go Rovers, let's go," and that big clap. So yeah, look, I mean, we can keep banging our heads on this wall. Grassroots rugby is clearly alive. It really is, and it needs to be given its due position in the rugby landscape, right? And I'm fully with Rob. I think if we were the headline act, we would have attracted more people. And after the Gallagher Shield, I think 60% of that crowd just disappeared, which is a bit disappointing because it shouldn't be like that. It shouldn't be like that because the Gallagher is the feeder gateway or pathway to the NPC. Although looking at the NPC side, I don't feel that way, given that I'm wearing I'm a through and through Manukau Rowers man, and I don't see any of our boys except one. So I thought I'd get that jab in there as well. So yeah, I think Rob, 100%, Mike. You're not the only one, and I thought I was the only one thinking like that. But just looking at all the forums online, there's a tremendous amount of support, and I think us Manukau, the little guys going in winning this, has done the grassroots game a massive favor. So we'll see how things roll.
Well, I was going to say, I remember going to, when I used to live in Auckland, I was a member of Auckland Rugby Club, and obviously went to a lot of the games. I remember going to one where they had the first 15 final, and the one stand that they opened was pretty full. Then is when the first 15 final finished, they all left, and then we had the NPC afterwards. And yeah, there was more people there for the school game than there was for the NPC game. But hey, that is what it is. Moving on, and Simon's saying here that I think the NPC should start a week later, not on the same weekend as Start Rugby Championship. I also don't know why Auckland Club Rugby runs into the start of NPC, whereas every other provincial competition that I can think of had their finals between 3 and 4 weeks ago, so that all of the provincial players were available for club rugby. So again, there are a bunch of, whilst we don't have the same scheduling issues as Europe does, where they have all sorts of crossovers, we do still have scheduling issues here in New Zealand as well. And perhaps that's a story for that's a discussion for another time, or for a Patreon special, I'm afraid, because we've got a lot of rugby still to get through tonight. So the good games in the NPC then, rather than the bad one that, or rather than the one-sided affair we had to start off with. Counties edged out Otago 23-22. That was apparently a cracker. I was covering bombing, which is, yes, your Manus into a bombing event in Hamilton. So if you want to see that, head over to the New Zealand Sport Radio Facebook page, and you can see some videos of people doing their Manus, and me interviewing one of the organisers of that, and how they've got bombing into the swimming baths, which is fantastic, safe environment for people to do bombing, rather than into the Waikato River, where you've got no idea what's under the water. But that's by the way. I didn't get to watch this game, but apparently it was a cracker. I did get to watch Waikato versus Hawke's Bay, though. 32-all into extra time. Boy, oh boy. This was two attacking sides that basically threw the kitchen sink at each other. They were absolutely knackered at the end of the game. You can see some of the interviews over on the New Zealand Force Facebook page. Now, Boa, you were busy, obviously, and so didn't see this one. But this was Liam Messham's 100th NPC game. By my calculations, his 391st first-class game. That is NPC, Super Rugby, International, Japanese Top League, and the top 14 with Toulon. 391 games. That plus 21 international sevens competitions. Boy, oh boy, he's a bit of a legend, isn't he?
He is, and no, Paul. Look, I'm a rugby nerd through and through. I spend 99% of my screen time watching rugby, analyzing rugby, dissecting rugby. So I did catch the highlights. I'm not surprised that it isn't his 3,000th appearance, because it feels like he's been around for that long. But no, what a cracking game! I mean, that's what we need to see: running, open, fast rugby, and both teams not afraid to trade punches. Because the more games we have like that, the more people will actually, head through the turnstiles, and that's actually what we want. We need more draws. We need more close games. We need to get away from these whole blowouts where, one team just comes and punches on the other. And rightly, you pointed out the scheduling. And look, well, nothing but respect to Liam Messam. He just keeps going on and on and on and on. Who knows? He might be playing first-class rugby when he's 60, because he's in good shape. And he might be picking up his 10,000th cap, Paul, we know. So, well done. Let me tip my hat off for the second time, first for Rob, and now for Mr. Liam Messam.
Well, let's hear from Liam Messam and see whether he will be actually making that 10,000th game like you suggested. After Waikato versus Hawke's Bay with Liam Messam. Now, by my counting, your 100 caps today means you're now at 391 first-class games. Boy, oh boy, that's some number. What does it mean to bring up the century?
Yeah, it means a lot. It's a lot of hard work and effort that's gone in. I think knowing this is my last year, I think things like this become more sentimental. And before I sort of just brushed it on and carried on playing. But yeah, I take nothing for granted, and I take moments like this. It's real special, especially to have my friends and family here today. It meant a lot.
And so often these landmark games, you can get over emotional and perhaps not play your best game per se. How have you managed to keep that all in check? Because they had a cracker out there, or it's a cracking game out there today.
Oh yeah, I thought we were pretty poor though in the first 20-30 minutes. Wasn't up to our standard. Maybe the occasion got to us a bit, and we just sort of went into our shells. And once we sort of got the cobwebs out, hopefully, the game opened up a bit, and as you could see at the end, it was a pretty free-flowing game.
It was, so you got plenty of experience to go by. Was this one of the more knackering games you've played in? Because the pace it was played at was quite nuts, as two attacking teams just threw everything at each other.
Well, it is when you haven't played rugby for almost a year. My last game was the final, so it was good to get the cobwebs out. And it was games like that are the games you want to play in, and hopefully it was a good spectacle for the fans.
And any kind of what sort of best memories of playing for Waikato over the years? It's
hard. It's hard. It's hard to go past the Shield with the rich history we have here in Waikato with the Rainfleet Shield. Winning that one up in North Harbour really sticks out, and obviously the championship in 06. That was I think the biggest memories for me is just the friendships that I've made and the connections that I made with the teammates that I played with, and also the fans in that as well.
Well, congratulations on all those. You've obviously played over in France, you've got to play in Japan, you've travelled the world with this. Not only have you got those 391 games, but you've also got 21 sevens competitions under your belt as well. So
that must add up to something, eh? I'll add those into it, bro.
So we're well over 400. Now, whether it'll make the 137, which I think is the record for Waikato, I think that's probably a little bit beyond you.
This is it, mate. This is my last season. I'm done.
Never say never, but you never know. But thank you so much for your time. Congratulations. It's an honour to have watched you through your career, and enjoy this last season. And and hopefully you got some cool stuff lined up for afterwards as well.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Thank you.
So there you go. Bill, he's categorically said this is his last season. He will not be going on until he's 60. So there we go. There's the answer for you.
I'm so disappointed. I'm so disappointed. And, what a champ! What a champ! And all that experience. So I think it's hopefully gets to go on a high. Hopefully, Waikato go on to take the NPC. They certainly have the firepower to do it. So we'll wait and see. Maybe this is going to be a special season for Liam Messam.
I think what was really interesting there was, whenever you listen to interviews with players, and I listen to quite a few, I want to listen to the What a Lad podcast and all that kind of stuff, and ex-players, it's always about the people they've played with, which is the big thing about this. Let's be honest, that's your big memories. But it's really interesting that the thing that his memory was, it was the Shield. It wasn't the championships he's won with Waikato, the Shield. It's amazing that the old Logger Wood is still the premier trophy and competition in provincial rugby. It's not the championships there, and I found that was really interesting there, Boa.
No question, because again, provincial. I mean, if we actually cut through the professional era which we're experiencing now, and if we can schedule things, or if we have some restructure, and if we actually make the NPC the be all and end all, I think it will really put the Logger Wood. It'll give its due place in New Zealand, the rugby hierarchy. But obviously, we have Super Rugby, which is a compilation of it's a franchise-based system, basically, with provinces making up the 5 franchises. But to the real rugby tragic, to the real rugby fan, they know exactly what the top piece of silverware is. And from a player's point of view, I mean, how many times have we seen the real epic close encounters when it comes to the Logger Wood? So I think, perspective-wise, no comparison. And also, what I have to say is just talking about Liam Messam. For me, the most vivid memory was, remember when he was running the water? He got into a bit of I wouldn't call it a scuffle, but and I think was it Nigel Owen? He was a referee, and then the week after, Nigel Owen was running the touch. He was the assistant referee, and as soon as Messam come close to, which was a bit of handbags, Owen jumps in and says, "Hey, we remember last week? Remember last week?" So for me, that was the most vivid memory of Liam Messam, and of course he dabbled a bit in the boxing ring. And if you look at his, square granite jaw, that tells you everything you need to know. And what a warrior.
Rob asking Boa if the Rovers are still celebrating. Look, if they are, they're not celebrating at the club anymore. Whilst that did go longer, and perhaps maybe some question marks around the licensing hours that they have there. But
I can formally assure you, I was in the club yesterday. Late afternoon, there were some remnants of celebrations, well within the legal guidelines. And I did tell the lads, look, guys, Monday is a working day, so it's time to wrap things along. And I said, when I leave, just send me a text message when the last man's out. True to form, a few hours later, I did get a text saying, yep, all done. And I'm satisfied that that chapter is now closed.
Not so much as her suggestions, the main tests could be moved to earlier in the year and domestic rugby become the premier attraction in the middle of the season. Look, there's all sorts of talk around what could be the global season. To me, the sensible way of doing a global season is the first 6 months are Super Rugby, and the second 6 months are international. And then in Northern Hemisphere, the first 6 months are club rugby, and the second 6 months are international. And that way, if the club season in Europe wants to kick off earlier and wants to kick off in September, or October, or November, they can do, but they know they don't get their international players until January. And to me, that way, it's very clear and easy. But unfortunately, there is no way the Six Nations will move to a summer competition in Europe. But that would be my way of doing it. I think the Southern Hemisphere, or the Super, or basically Australia and New Zealand, because everyone else has been kicked out of Super Rugby now, essentially have the right structure of the first 6 months is Super Rugby, and then July onwards until the end of November is internationals. But there you go. That's a personal opinion, and we could go down that route, and we're running along anyway, so I'll try and avoid that. Quickly then, for the rest of the Bunnings then, Auckland beat North Harbour 36-26. Taranaki, 11-13 against Northland, and Taranaki with a chance of a late penalty to win it that got missed. So that was a cracking game. Wellington, 37, Bay of Plenty, 35. Wow. Even higher scoring than your Waikato Hawke's Bay. But another one, only 2 points in it. Cracking game. And then Tasman with a comfortable victory over Southland, 27-20. I'll be honest, that one closer than I was expecting. The other games, I think all of them I would have thought, yeah, they're teams that are next to each other. Actually, North Harbour, again, I think could have lost by more than 10, but kept it close. But yeah, look, cracking games across the NPC there. I say the only one that wasn't really was that opening game, which I think was the wrong one. Don't forget, folks, that we have a midweek game, which is Manukau versus Auckland. I'll be honest, that's a comfortable away win written all over it. But yeah, don't forget, folks, we do have midweek NPC games again. Storm weeks are back because they have a 9 week regular season, and they want to get their full 10 games in. I'll be honest, I didn't catch any of those. Boa, did you catch any sort of comments across any of the other games?
Yeah, of course. Like I said, I'm the rugby nerd, so I watched all the highlights, rewind, pause, all out hours. I particularly like the Wellington game. I thought that should have been the first game, being the curtain raiser, because wow, it was a cracking game. Large periods of time, defense was optional, but it made for a very entertaining sort of game, punch, counter punch. And, that's what you expect at first class level, because these guys, they've got the skill set, they've got the gas. Or even all the other games were close enough and like you rightly pointed out, the curtain raiser. So it'll be interesting to see, and of course how the teams roll their squads around, because I'm expecting to see wholesale changes for the midweek game featuring Auckland. So yeah, it'll be sort of interesting to see. But I think just looking slightly ahead in the future, 4 maybe 5 weeks into the competition, once the teams all get their combinations right and the form lines on point, we will start to see some of the leaders emerge. But as things are, I'm expecting more closer games. And what I will say is, from a tipping point of view, don't be afraid to go for a few draws, because every year round about this, and we've done very well over the past seasons, Paul, you know that. I've called a few draws. Don't be afraid, have a crack. And yeah, you might be a very happy man, laughing all the way to the bank.
Yeah, and quite often the draw can be 21 to 1, or $21, sorry. So you can, if you back 20 and you get one right, you're going to actually be up. So not necessarily a bad call there, sir, on that one. This coming weekend, I've got my daughters, so I will not be at any of the games. I don't know if we'll have to wait and see how the health of Stephen Harris, but I don't know if he'll make it up to Northland for Northland Waikato, or whether he'll pop over to Harbour for Harbour Manukau. But looking at the games on there, Canterbury versus Wellington, 2 teams that kicked off their season well. That one should be a cracker. Bay of Plenty against Taranaki. Taranaki, remember, undefeated last season. Really upset that they couldn't get promoted, but they have been kind of promoted as A1 competition now. So that one also jumps out at me. Those to me are the two fixtures that I would be suggesting you sort of set your alarm clock to make sure you catch the full ones of. The rest, I reckon, you can probably do with highlights. To be honest with you, actually, I should have done the same thing for the Farah Palmer Cup. I didn't look forward and tell you which ones you probably you should have a crack at. In the championships, Otago versus Tasman, 2 sides going well. But as I say, I think Otago and Hawke's Bay are the 2 that should end up top 2 there. In the Premiership, well, Canterbury versus Waikato, a repeat of the final from last year. That's one not to miss. I expect that Bay of Plenty should have too much for counties, and that Wellington will have too much for Manukau too. But that one, Canterbury versus Waikato, in the Premiership on Saturday at 4:35, is one to catch if you can for the Farah Palmer Cup. Right then, Boa, international rugby. Let's deal with the easy one first. Argentina versus Australia, before we head into the big one that will take us on for the next 2 hours. Look, Argentina, fantastic start to this game. Australia, stacks of injuries coming into this game. Not only injuries, but also you've got oh dear, we've got John joining us. This could be bad for the he's just joined us for the international part of the game. He mentioned part of the to chat. What a surprise! Good to have you, John. We're going to start off with Argentina, Australia, but injuries. Then we had Hooper with whose mind wasn't in the right place and pulled out through mental health issues. And then we also had Quade Cooper getting injured during this game as well. For Australia to come back and win this one 26-41. Boa, that's a massive achievement by the Wallabies.
It certainly is. But if you look at the traditional form line and statistical patterns, Argentina have always struggled first up at home. So I thought it was a really good option to take against Argentina, and that's exactly what happened. But yeah, look, I don't want to read too much into Australia's performance because it's a bit sort of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde sort of thing. Early up, Argentina better of them, and then they just went rapidly downhill from there. But good start for the Wallabies, because they'll take this momentum going forward, and they'll see a lot of positives, primarily because they were missing some key players through injuries. So it'll be interesting to see how they muscle up again. But I guess the game I'm really looking forward to, based on this form line, is actually the Wallabies muscling up against the Springboks. That'll give us a true picture of where they are.
John, did you catch this Argentina versus or Pumas versus Wallabies game, and your thoughts on that one?
I caught the 30-minute highlights. At one stage, just going from the highlights, remember, so this is not really a fair reflection of the whole flow of the game. But at one stage, I thought that the Wallabies were in serious trouble. It looked like Argentina had good control of the game, and they did really well to come back. So yes, that was a great performance. I also think it's important to applaud Michael Hooper for his decision and for his willingness to be public about what occurred, right? So he could have hidden behind some private reason, whatever it may be, and his mental health is not something that is not something that can legally be discussed in public by his employer. So he could have tried to hide it, but he fronted up. And at this time where mental health is increasingly something we realize so many people are dealing with in various ways, and have been for, let's be honest, probably for centuries, but it just hasn't been part of our cultural discussion. I think it's something to be applauded that he was open and honest about it in a very male, testosterone, tough, environment like rugby is. It's just about, short of war, right, is just about as aggro and male as you can imagine. So I think that's really important, that we respect and applaud him for what he did. You remember, it's not that long ago that Australia had a still active Wallaby with many tests commit suicide. Wasn't actively in the squad at the time, but was playing overseas. But it's not that long ago that we had a Australian, widely respected, still active Australian forward commit suicide. So I applaud him for that. And I think that their ability to recover on Saturday from being down and from looking like they were really under the pump is a very good sign for them, considering how many players that they lost. And the scoreline is slightly flattering to them, in that there was a late try while Australia were trying to get out and try and close the gap. They were 8 points behind, and they were trying to get close and run the ball from probably a position they wouldn't have done normally. So yeah, it's a good performance by Australia.
Actually, before we move on to Australia, on the hoop sightings, look, what we don't know is kind of what stage is he just mentally burnt out and just
yes,
and is just tired mentally, or is he?
Yes.
Does he have other mental health issues? We don't know. So let's just.
We don't
so
know.
at the moment, whilst yes, it's good that he stood up in front of his and put his hand up and said yes, that he would do. Kind of what extent those are.
We don't know.
We need to realize that there are variations, just like there is a variations
Yes.
in a thigh strain. There's variations in mental health or things as well.
Yes.
So I just want to make that out. Obviously, the Vickerman thing was at one extreme end. We don't know quite where Hooper is on that. And look, we just hope he returns and is good. On the rugby side of things, or on the game side of things, should I say? Look, you're quite right. 19 to 10 down, so 9 points down. They lose Quade Cooper to an injury. You have Reece Hodge coming in as your 10. Doesn't breed a lot of confidence, let's be blunt, but they came back and did it. So yes, a fantastic group fortitude mentally for the team there. And as you say, both sides happy to play well into extra time and to not have the game stop. Both sides had the ball and could stop the game. With the Pumas going for the losing bonus point, and obviously the Wallabies going for the try bonus point. But this game in reality was 26-34. It's still an 8-point win. It's still a 2-score win, which after being 9 points down or 2 scores down is a really good achievement by the Wallabies. So well done there on that one. Both of you, any final comments on this one before we get into the
the one thing I said, Puma's discipline was terrible. I think they gave something like 16 penalties in that second half. It was just quite shocking, really. So at test level, you just can't do that. And against a team, which had some good X factor players like the Wallabies, and I thought it was quite an evenly matched sort of game. And that's what I love the Pumas give up the game pretty much, the winning and losing, because every time they made some headway, it was a real coach killer because they had some real poor discipline in and around the ruck area, particularly just losing their feet, going off their feet. And they give them back to the Wallabies. So that's something they're going to have to watch. And particularly against some of the better sides like the Springboks, they will be punished.
And also remember, the Wallabies were hugely under the pump in the scrums, right? So, and the RGs are, of course, historically very good scrumming team, but they're not currently known as an incredible scrumming power in international rugby. So that's an area of weakness that Australia may be targeted by some of the stronger scrumming teams.
Right then, we've avoided it 55 minutes. Now it's time for the Springboks versus the All
Listen,
Blacks.
I didn't come here to talk about this. I came here to congratulate Boa on what was the game of the weekend and on his team winning after half a century of sorrow and woe. I would never have thought that unbiased, well-balanced show like this would leave the last 5 minutes to talk about the All Black team just because they lost. I mean, that would be this kind of sports journalism, cronyism, one-eyed kind of thing that I'd expect from me. I wouldn't expect it from, semi-professionals, at least, wearing such stylish hats as the two of you.
Now, John, now you've thanked Boa and congratulated Boa on his on his win. You can bugger off then. And we'll just cut you.
I thought you would have devoted a fair chunk of the show already to this. I thought I would be skating in right at the end here just to make sure that I congratulated Boa, asked if he's available to coach New Zealand, because and maybe he's got some players that could play for New Zealand.
Well, look, I appreciate you making the trip. It was lovely to see you there. As far as players making the All Blacks, we can't seem to even crack the NPC squad. So I think we're way out of luck when it comes to the All Blacks.
Just tell your good players to go to Christchurch. As much as I hate the evil empire down there, you got to give it to them. They know how to develop rugby players.
Yeah, they sure do, and they've I think they've read the EO, the Equal Opportunities book, a little bit better than the folk up in England. So yeah, it's actually not a bad idea.
By the way, before we completely dive into the darkness that is the All Blacks at the moment, Boa posted a clip of Sir Brian. What's his name? So he came into your change room. What's his name?
Sir Brian Williams.
Sir Brian what?
So Brian Williams. Now, this was
Brian Williams, and he came in and
chat.
congratulated Boa's team, even though his club, his lifelong club, had lost the final, and his speech was just such class. It was so complimentary. It was so. I mean, how many people would come in and say that the better team won on the day and that they did well, and yet we'll be back for you. But he was just all class. Everything that rugby really is about when it comes to the brotherhood of the game. So Brian exemplified in that little speech, and I just thought that was wonderful to see.
Indeed.
So now to delve into the darkness that is the game from the weekend. 26 to 10. What amazes me is that this is the biggest All Blacks loss to the Springboks since '94. So that's nearly 30 years in that one.
It is 30 years because South Africa came back into international rugby in '92. So it's 30 years of since their return. It's the biggest win.
Sorry, in 94 years. Sorry, not since '94. In 94 years. So in 94 years, this is the biggest loss to that, which is just nuts, nearly a century. and it's only 16 points. And this is not yes, it was a one-sided affair, but the scoreboard didn't show how one-sided the game was. So I'm amazed it was that. This is the 5th equal biggest loss by the All Blacks of all time, and that just boom. Only 16 points is your 5th biggest loss. That is kind of nuts, really.
Yes.
Yeah. And I guess this is where we get into this of kind of like, oh, All Blacks fans are arrogant because they expect to win every game. Well, when you never lose by more than 16 points, it becomes what you kind of expect, because it is it's just nuts. And as LB says, All Blacks need superlatives, but darkness doesn't cut it. Look, it's amazing as to, I say, yes, it was a bad lot. It was a one-sided affair. The correct team won. Don't get me wrong, but for this to be one of your biggest losses of all time, kind of does my head in a bit, really, because this is not from a scoreboard card point of view. There was an outside chance, but within the last 20 minutes of them coming back, but they could have come back against the run of play, admittedly. So that from that point of view, I'm amazed as to kind of how the numbers stack up from there. From this, though, and John, I'm going to open the floor to you first, because the fans in the live chat are shouting for you to put the knife in. Your thoughts first on the Springboks and what you thought of how your team went in this game.
Well, I think it's in line with what you said. I think it's instructive to talk about the difference in mindsets between New Zealand, who the All Blacks are possibly the greatest team in team sport ever. Maybe there's an argument their success rate, especially if you take out Foster, who's lost, I think it's 8 games now out of 24, 25 that he's been coach, and Steve Hansen lost 9 games in 108. Right? It's like mind blowing that Steve Foster had a win rate of over 90%, including playing away from home. That there is an instinct in the All Blacks to not only never give up and always to keep coming, which is what keeps the score closer, but also they are utterly ruthless. The Springboks, on the other hand, historically are not as much as it irks me to say that historically they could have defended into, we're going to lose this game, we're going to lose this match, let's just make sure we win the fight, right? So that is a little bit a part of their history, which allows some scores to blow up, especially against the All Blacks. And the other thing is that when they're on top, they're not as ruthless. They don't put the knife into other teams, and sometimes can play a little bit down to their level once the game is secured and there's no doubt that what's going to happen. The Springboks are a much better team than most of world rugby is prepared to admit. They have a selection of players across the back line, which is the big thing. Everybody expects the Springboks to have great players. They've got a range of players across the back line that are of, if not the best in the world at the moment in various positions, they're certainly in the top 2, right? So, and they have hugely underrated players in the back line. For instance, is at 13, to me, reminds me tremendously of Conrad Smith, where they are both hugely underrated as players.
To stop you there. To call Am underrated when I think everyone admits, or everyone acknowledges he's the best 13 in the world at the moment.
Do they? I mean, is that, no, I'm surprised. I didn't know that was the case.
I think Am would take, for most people putting together their world 15s at the moment, Am would take the 13 jersey. Absolutely.
Okay, to be fair, I wasn't aware of that. I've thought that Am is the best 13 since the last World Cup year, right? There's just so much nous in the way that he plays that reminds me so much of Conrad Smith. There's so much intelligence. And the fact also that's not spoken about is that he runs the Springbok defense system. He is the one that coordinates everything from the back line, which makes sense not only because of his rugby brain, but also because of the position that he is on their rush defense from the outside in, being at 13. It makes sense to run it from there if you've got the right person with the right brain. And if I can just add this as well, it's wonderful that this is unfolding in this way, that he coordinates that strategic position, because it undermines all the, let's be honest, the remnants of racism that might be existing in the game in South Africa, where the previous thought was, oh, non-white players can only play as wing, right? Where you give them a ball and let them run. So that's great to see his coordination. So I think the Springboks across the board are a better team than they are given credit for. They are coached and play a style that is very conservative. It's the way that they have recovered from. Let's remember, when was it? It's 5 years ago now. Is it 5 years ago or 4 years ago? 2018,
no,
when it was 57-0. 57-0 is a long way to come back from. So
true. Now, but I'm going to cut off there. From this game, you're quite right. Look, the Boks are, along with France and Ireland, the three teams I think going to go into the next Rugby World Cup as favourites. I think one of the points from this game that I think we saw, and I think Boa, you're one of the ones who was in our live chats going right. Yep, 13 plus definitely for the for next weekend. But this South African team doesn't put sides away. As you say, it's a conservative game plan that's got wonderful players in the back line that just doesn't use them, or uses them in a way that doesn't rack up points.
Exactly. You've hit the nail on the head.
So this and then that's what we see from this team. To me, once New Zealand lost, had the early scrum, got the scrum penalty against them. South Africa camped in the All Blacks half, and then just couldn't get out of there because the Springboks, the first I think 20-30 minutes, just didn't give a penalty, and from there the game was gone because so the All Blacks were camped in their own half and had no way to exit, and that only led to a 10-3 half time. It should have led to much more than that, as we said, because they should put more points, but. That fantastic discipline, that opening half hour, even with the loss of Faf de Klerk, I think was really where South Africa controlled this game. There's been a lot of comments here that Foster Cannon said this is the best game that we've played this year. Defensively, they're into the top 90% of the tackle completion. Only gave up 26 points in a game that they were dominated in. Do you think he was do you think Foster's being? I mean, a lot of people are laughing at him, say this is the best game, but considering he's only had 3 games against Ireland, I actually do. It wasn't necessarily miles wrong there. That even though they did lose badly, this is the best game they've played, even though they've lost badly. But
well, overall, I think he's being called delusional. I mean, that's just one facet of the game. That's just one facet of the game. And just adding on to what John says, I think Lukhanyo Am is actually the most intelligent player in the World Rugby Union at the moment. Just the way the guy organizes, as you said, John, the defensive structure, his ability to see what's ahead, and that's what actually stifled the All Blacks. Particularly, they just didn't know what hit them in the day, and they just didn't have the creativity or the ability or the time to do something different. So coming back to what you said, Paul, look, that's just one facet of the game. But if you look at overall how we played, there was no, when was the last time any of you remember the All Blacks doing a strike move off a line-out? I can't recover. So this is where the problem is, guys. The attack shape it's non-existent. The All Blacks have gone into this default mode where they expect the opposition to kick back at them, kick badly, and create a counter-attack where X Factor comes in. Now, the thing is, with a side like the Springboks, it's almost like a python trying to choke the life out of you. And when they do it really well, and the Springboks play really well without the ball in hand, once they get that defensive structure, it's very difficult to crack. The only way you can do that is to be creative. And the creativity came far too late in the game when Caleb Clark made that line bust. So I think this is where the game was actually won and lost. And the Springboks just were so comfortable. It was actually quite embarrassingly easy that the way they didn't do anything special. They just backed their systems and processes. They knew fully well what they were doing. They knew fully well what they didn't have to do. And for me, that's the most alarming thing. So for a head coach to come out and say, "I'm sorry," that is the most ridiculous statement I've heard in a long time, because rugby is not won or lost on just one facet of the game. And if you were to look further into, particularly around our attack shape, I don't think we probably only made one proper line bust in 80 minutes. And there was recycled possession after ruck, but we were just going side to side. And the box knew this, and they just waited for the right position. And a guy called Malcolm Marks turned up, and he was just cherry picking when he chose. So to me, that is real poor execution, particularly at this level.
Now, to me, I mean, one of the points there you say is that that the Springboks identified that the All Blacks basically love to attack off counter-attack ball when you kick it to them, and the king of that is Will Jordan. So what did they do? They made sure they never, ever kicked to the left wing, and to the right to the right wing, which was where he was. Therefore, Will Jordan did not touch the ball for the first half of the game. He spent 40 minutes on that pitch not touching the ball. That is obviously a joke. That you have a player who some people say is the best fullback in the world. I put him down as the best counter-attacking fullback, definitely, in the world, and yet you don't say he doesn't touch the ball once in the entire first half. So you're right. It was very clever play by South Africa on that side of things. There was also dumb play, as you say, from the All Blacks, and the fact that they, against a rush defence, were spinning the ball wide, and it wasn't off front football. If they hadn't got over the game line, they hadn't got the South African defenders to run backwards, and they were trying to go wide. And against rush defence, that isn't going to happen. That isn't going to work. And as Boa rightly pointed out, Malcolm Marks had an absolute field day. Now, he's not an open side flanker; he's a hooker, but he played that open side flanker role.
But remember, just as a comment, he is a former flanker that was recycled into a hooker in the early part of his professional career. So he's got that DNA.
Yep. But I say you're looking at your Pococks and players who do. He did a Pocock job in that game, which was very impressive, and also on his 50th cap. So congratulations.
And do you notice what they do when they take him off? Not only do they bring Mbonambi on, they also bring Kwagga Smith on. So they have a pest on the ground gets taken off, and another pest comes on, but just in a different position. And immediately, Kwagga Smith started winning turnover ball.
Yeah, one thing I have to say is this technique Malcolm Marks used. It's what I call the Marks Sparks, and it's actually something borderline illegal. It really depends on the referee, because what Marks does is he will target a specific ruck with a specific ball carrier, and the tackler, he actually gets the tackler jammed in the same motion as the jackal. And technically, I mean, it's impossible for the tackler to roll away, but the referee's attention is so much on his hands going down onto the ball, they get away with it. And to me, that is the most smartest bit of rugby I have seen in a long time, because I've cut that little bit of video. I'll share it with you guys, and I've slowed it right down to about 20%. And just looking at it, to me, that's rugby IQ. That's intelligence going into light years. And I think this is an aspect where the Boks are actually really winning the battle, and this is something we can actually learn. I mean, I've learned a lot from that. So, you know, I think it's time the New Zealand rugby public acknowledge that, and we actually learn something from the box.
And what's really interesting now that you pointed out, the penny drops for me, Boa, is that what he does is that he more often than not gets a penalty rather than actually retrieving the ball. He sometimes does, to be fair. He sometimes rips the ball back and the box continue playing, but he most often latches onto that ball and pulls it into the ball carrier, right? And by pulling it, and he lifts the ball carrier, and he's so big and strong, of course, that when he gets hit, it just accentuates the fact that it looks like the ball carrier hasn't released the ball. Now, when Quagga Smith comes on, it's different. Quagga Smith turns the ball over more than winning penalties. He actually rips the ball out and gets it away rather than winning a penalty. It's two slightly different techniques, but the same point of view is that they have become absolute pests on defense when it comes to the ball hitting the ground.
Now, there is a counter for this. So, Fozzie, if you're watching this, give me a call. Happy to help you out, mate.
What is the counter, Boa?
So rather than focus on the ball, so imagine if I'm the tackle player where I put the ball down, and if you're Malcolm Marx trying to hover over the ball, what I would do is I'd go for Malcolm Marx's collar and I drag him down. Soon as he loses his shape, he has to roll away and get back on his feet.
Yeah,
it's a very simple.
You see,
it's what I call a rugby hack.
Yeah. Now, also what South Africa used to do with Richie McCaw to try and counter is that they would run at him. So they would target. So they would look for McCaw and run at him and make him tackle. Because as soon as he's on attack, as soon as he's the tackler, he can't be the jackler because he's on the ground. And then they would remove him from play for that ruck and at least the next ruck, because he would be on the ground, he wouldn't be able to attend the next ruck. And the next time they have two rucks later, they'd look for McCaw and they'd run at him again to make him commit to a tackle. Right. So those are the two options that you can use for. Sorry, I've just lost a bit of light here. But yes, those are the two options that you have when dealing with a real pest on the ground. The problem is that if the Springboks realize just what they have in Quagga Smith and decide to bring him on earlier, the thing that I'm concerned about is two things will have changed this Saturday for the All Blacks. One is the Springboks were treating the All Blacks with a lot of deference, and rightly so, because there have been so many times that the Springboks have thought they've had the All Blacks only to get badly bitten. And so they almost didn't believe that they were the better team. Now that they see that they are clearly the better team, if they attack with more confidence and with more swagger, as well as the accumulated effect of playing the Springboks 2 weeks in a row, because remember, for some of these players that are playing for the All Blacks, they've never played a South African team. They've never been in South Africa before. And there's no other team in the world that exacts the same physical toll on the body as playing South African teams. And so now you've got this 2 weeks in a row. That combination of an increase in confidence and self-belief that the Springboks will have, as well as that cumulative physical impact, I'm concerned that it could get quite ugly this Saturday.
So just to quote, just to throw a number in there about that, 12 of the All Blacks 23 had never played a test in South Africa before. Sorry, Bart.
No question. It'll be another hiding because it's Ellis Park. Now, you know, I'm a man. I put the emotion aside. I look at the statistical numbers. Ellis Park has not been a favorable venue for the All Blacks whatsoever. And just building on this, South Africa are only going to get better. They will be more ruthless. They'll smell the blood. And what they will do is they'll probably up the physicality a bit more. They'll look at more direct runners. They'll look at more pick and goes. And also they will look to launch off the line out, keep it nice and tight, try and suck in as many defenders. And they'll be patient. And that's what I like about the Springboks. They're not in a hurry. They're very patient. And it's almost like a vice-like grip they have. And once they're in that mood, it's very difficult to disrupt. The only way I see the All Blacks countering this is turning the box around. And to do that, there is a weapon they can use. That's called a 50-22. So I'll say it again, 50-22. But unfortunately, because of this obsession of one-out runners and always trying to overplay from your own half, this has just kind of got lost in transit. So this is something we've overseen. So again, hey, Fozzie, if you need help, give me a call. I've got a few ideas, some pitch maps, because keep in mind, I am a rugby nerd. This is what I do. I love dissecting things, looking at where the areas are. Like how the box kept the ball away from Will Jordan. There's a target in the box. That's Willie LaRue. You just make him running side to side. Use the 50-22. Get the big, heavy forward pack running backwards and look to speed up at line-out time. That is the only way this All Black team will get any headway. But Ellis Park, it's a graveyard.
But that's very difficult to do when you're in your own 22 to do it which is what happened here in that first half hour because of that loss, because of that scrum penalty. Which means,
by the way, sorry, Paul, just as a last thing, and this might be tough to swallow, but the All Blacks don't have the athletes that they had in 2015. It's easy to forget that in that team that won the 2015 World Cup were a string of players who would challenge for the greatest All Blacks in their position in 125 years. And that doesn't happen often. And at the moment, you've got a group of players, no matter what you say about Foster, you've got a group of players in the squad who, many of them would battle to make the Springbok squad, not the match day team. They would battle to make the Springbok squad. You've got players on the bench for the Springboks that you would pick in your All Black starting team, right? That are coming off the bench. So, South Africa's got for instance, in the tight forwards, it's got a wealth of locks. There are 3 quasi locks that started the game on Saturday that would all be in the match day squad for the All Blacks, and that's not even counting some of the ones that are injured, like RG Snyman, that is still to come back into match fitness. So the reality is that no matter what, no matter how good Razor Roberts is, and he is an outstanding coach, you've got to recognize the fact that Graham Henry and Steve Hansen had a generation of players that is very, very rare, even for a country like New Zealand, where you had a confluence of greatness at the same time. It's very seldom you get a Richie McCaw and a Dan Carter who could arguably be the best players ever in any team in their position playing in the same team.
So with that, Bella, with John saying we don't have the cattle, what changes?
I didn't say you don't have the cattle. I just said that. I didn't say that. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that we've gone from New Zealand. We've gone from here to a far more regular level of player. And what we can forget is that what we had was extraordinary in New Zealand. It wasn't the norm, even for a great rugby team like the All Blacks, even for the best rugby team in history. Even for them, it was like unbelievable what was being fielded for the All Blacks in that period.
No, I agree with John, and I think change. We have. I'm just looking at Nocturnal's comment. We absolutely have to make changes. Start to the coach, but I guess
we're not going to make changes to the coach before Saturday. So what changes between?
I'll get back for now. No, from players, I think get Peter Gasokula in there. I think he's far more mobile, number 8, and we got to look at the halves combination. We can't just continue doing the same thing. And look, if we don't have the same level of Superman athlete, then we have to look at our tactics. We need to be better on the field, and this is why I keep talking about this 50-22. This is a tailor-made weapon. If you have guys who have the ability to kick really well out of their hand, I mean, it's a no-brainer against some of the bigger sides who like to go from set piece to set piece. This is your chance to basically kick from your half into the opponent's 22, get your line-out throw-in, call a strike move, and score tries. Or worst-case scenario, set it up, go for a drop goal. I mean, to me, that makes sense. That's how you win test matches. You know, you go for the percentage plays. So given that we are missing that level of rugby IQ, that is really alarming, and we have to look at new ways of innovating or manufacturing points if we don't necessarily have the strike power, and that's how we're going to get our confidence back. So unless that happens, if we continue to do the same thing, we'll get the same result. If we go with the same formula, I'm afraid Ellis Park, we're going to get a good old-fashioned hybrid.
So to me, I think the space to change is around the props. With George Bower and Angus Arvo both dropping out the side and being replaced, to my mind, that you can't be giving up a scrum penalty on your first scrum. So that would be my first my first area of change. I'm also not a great fan of Havili in that 12 jersey and Rico in that 13. I don't think that combination works. Unfortunately, looking at the players who are out there, there's not many other options, to be honest with you. I mean, Quintapaya, look, he's only got 10 caps. Is it fair throwing him in at this point? RTS, look, RTS is not ready for Test rugby against the Springboks. Put bluntly, he shouldn't have been in the squad until the Argentina game. I'm afraid. So a little bit. So it's a bit strange there. And if Jack Goodhue, so I'd rather go with Tapia and Goodhue if Goodhue is fit. Clearly, Bowden Barrett should not be playing this weekend after landing on his head. So you're going to have start with Richard Mo'unga and have Perifeta on the bench. That'll be an interesting one. So
I'll start with Perifeta. I think he's got the better all-round kicking game, and we've just got to get the territorial advantage, because Ellis Park has, if you look at all the historical pitch maps where teams have actually scored, it's been from their own green zone. They haven't gone coast to coast. So trying to play that type of rugby is just not going to work. That's a historical pattern. And with this current form line, this All Black side, the way they're playing, they're not going to do that. So we have to do something different. We have to think a little bit smarter. We have to play territory. We need to turn the big box, get them on their Uber ride, beat them to the line out, force the pace. So to do that, we need some fresh thinking. We can't have the same personnel for the sake of fear of failure. Because if we're going to lose, we might as well try something different. That is my philosophy. And I think this will spark something if we get some different set of players. And yeah, we just got to do something different, Paul. Otherwise, this is going to become quite embarrassing.
Yep. And look, I've already mentioned 5 changes there with 2 props, 2 centres, and or both centres and a fly half. To make more changes than that, well, then you're basically putting in a brand new side. And can you expect a brand new side to put in a performance? Probably not. So I think it's unfair to make more changes, but hey, there we go. We'll have to see how it pans out. But basically, I think between everybody, you could probably say that only about 3 or 4 players should actually stay in there, and they'd be happy with kind of 11 changes, that starting 15 in some ways. So I think things have perhaps overreacted in that sense. But when you say that a 15-point loss is the fifth equal worst loss of all time, you kind of get where it's kind of coming from. Look, running to an hour and a half, I'm going to wrap it up there. But I don't expect any changes from the Springboks. I do not expect them to do what they did against Wales and bring in 13 changes to the second test. I expect we'll see the exact same team run out, bar obviously one winger who is going to be banned for a number of weeks if he hasn't been already. That'll be the only change I expect to see in the side. There may be some changes as to who is on the bench and who is starting, but other than that, I think we'll see a very, very similar Springbok team, even if they are playing with a bit more confidence, as John has suggested earlier. But Boa, congratulations again for Manukau Rovers, and thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you, guys.
John,
one last parting shot. Keep in mind the Boks are missing Vermeulen and Cheslin Colby. So imagine if those 2 guys in. It's a very scary proposition. So I'm very worried for this weekend, and I'm sure John's quite happy.
I think every team has to deal with injuries. So so that from that point of view, I'm no team, or it's very, very rare for teams to put out their first ever choice team. So you always have 1 or 2 injuries. But yeah,
I think and I'm sorry I dropped out there when you asked that question, what could be done. Your point is very valid when it comes to what the impact that Vermeulen could make, and it depends also if they are match fit, because him and Francois Steyn have both been included in the squad, but they weren't considered up to match fitness yet, especially against the All Blacks. So they weren't considered for this particular test just gone by. And if they are fit, they might, somebody like Willie Leroux might not even make the match day squad. They might put Francois Steyn on the bench, and they might bring Dwayne Vermeulen. I'm not sure where they stand on their fitness. But the thing that the All Blacks need to do is to shift their thinking from players like Akira Ioane, who can physically dominate contact points against Ireland, but are not going to do it against the Springboks. And they need to go to a more moving the ball into space, and in fact, a more adventurous type of attack. And when I say that, I do agree with Bo about using the kick more strategically, but use it as a bold strategy rather than a conservative strategy, as an attacking 50-22 option, or trying to make the ball land on grass, and try and utilize players that play into space and use footwork, because players like Caleb Clark and Akira Ioane just feed into the box psyche. That is the way that they want to play, and that's the way they want opposition to play against them. But the silky, skillful stuff, hopefully, they got to abandon caution and just take the rapier to the broadsword, is the way that they're going to be able to beat the Boks, because otherwise it's not going to work.
Totally.
Right.
100%.
Mine in the toilets. Thank you, boys. Thank you, John. It's been a pleasure. We've run over by a lot, but hey, bounds happened with so much rugby at the weekend, and such important rugby as well. No surprise, folks. That might happen again next Monday. So do join us again next Monday at 8 p.m. for the DrivingMaul show. And don't forget, we've also got our league show on Wednesday night at 8 p.m. at the standoff. So thank you, John. Thank you, Bella. It's been an absolute